Today we will hear from foundational Black Americans discussing the latest news dealing with Ghana going to the United Nations to submit resolution on transatlantic slavery. Check it out.
This is a resolution seeking to declare the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. For more than 300 years, Africans were treated as property, were tortured, humiliated, raped, and forced out of the continent, over 12.5 million of them, in the most dehumanizing and despicable circumstances. The world is yet to acknowledge this. Perpetrators are yet to apologize and have not compensated the victims. This is a time to demand reparatory justice.
I'm for any and everybody getting their just due, but I'm really confused on this statement because, yes, if you ask me, the transatlantic slave trade was one of the biggest crimes against humanity in general. But here's where the confusion comes in. That guy's from Ghana. His people sold my people. That's why I'm here. So it's kind of confusing that they're calling for reparations. Reparations from whom? Which government, right? Because only about 300,000 Africans came to what we consider the United States today. That's a verifiable fact, okay? So when you talk about reparations, we're gonna have to talk about the English government, right? Those Arab countries that are still selling slaves today, they owe you, right? But he used transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade was only the Caribbean and America. That's it. Slavery as a whole was much, much more than that. I hope you guys can understand that and decipher what I'm trying to say. So when I hear a man in Africa saying transatlantic slave trade, he has to be more specific on what he's talking about. And then I would love to know how they think they deserve reparations, seeing that their people sold my people, right? And reparations from whom?
Why is Ghana laying wreaths on our ancestors' graves? The Ghanaian government has made plans to lay wreaths on our ancestors' graves in Manhattan, New York. The wreaths will be laid at the African Burial Ground National Monument in Manhattan, New York. First and foremost, there's no proof that our ancestors' remains in New York are of African origin. In Lorenzo Green's masterpiece, The Negro in Colonial New England, he proves that only 3 to 4 Africans came to the United States per year in 1680. Dr. Green's book was published by Columbia University in the 1940s. Speaking of Columbia University, Dr. Howard Zinn of Columbia University identified us as Indian or of native origin. Given the fact that Ivy League scholars in the Ivy League have identified us as indigenous Indians, why is Ghana laying wreaths on our burial ground? Could Ghana's wreath laying ceremony be part of a spell to destiny swap? Ghana, leave my ancestors alone. Ghana was the first to enslave us and now they want to save us?
Ghanaian President Mahama is trying to come over here to the United States of America and lay his voodoo wreath, his voodoo African wreath on the gravesite of Black Americans in the United States of America to destiny swap with Black Americans. Now we have to stop this. This is taking place March 24th, 2026 in New York. I'm going to give you the information. Now, you know, the Africans have been in cahoots with a lot of different people trying to disenfranchise Black Americans with the United Nations. Black Americans did not give consent to this. First of all, a lot of people don't understand how this works. Now they're trying to somehow speak up for Black Americans for reparations. Reparations doesn't work that way. I want you to understand that first and foremost. Reparations is by lineage. What does Ghana have to do with our reparations? All Black Americans didn't even come from Africa. That's number one. I know a lot of you don't want to hear that, but understand this. If you are an American Indian in the United States of America and you have these Africans speaking on your behalf, assuming that you are African and African descent, they're going to fuck up your birthright in the United States of America. We do not want these Africans speaking for us. Who gave them the right? Who gave them the consent? Who are the families of these Black Americans buried in the United States of America and in New York? We did not give you consent. We do not want your evil voodoo wreath placed upon our ancestors and our loved ones. Get these Africans up out of here. I told you from the get-go, these people want to destiny swap with you. You understand? They can't come in through the front door because many Black Americans, indigenous American Indians are delineating. So they're trying to do everything possible to come in through the back door, but we ain't going to allow that to happen. Put them down, put them down, put them down. Take those wreaths off those grave sites, snatch the wreaths out their hand, send those evil voodoo wreaths back to Africa. Return the sender. This is Kenadaway, the 5th great grandson of Nat Turner, one of the greatest American freedom fighters of all time. We do not consent to none of this mischief from Africa. Take it back. You sold your own people into slavery. So how dare you come over here when you got all these problems going on in Ghana, going on in Africa? You're criminals. We know you.
Ghana wishes to draw attention to the very consequential resolution which President John Dramani Mahama of Ghana will be tabling on the 25th of March, which is just next week, Wednesday, a few days from now. This is a resolution seeking to declare the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. For more than 300 years, Africans were treated as property, were tortured, humiliated, raped, and forced out of the continent, over 12.5 million of them, in the most dehumanizing and despicable circumstances. The world is yet to acknowledge this. Perpetrators are yet to apologize and have not compensated the victims. This is the time to demand reparatory justice, and this is the time to demand restitution.
You know, I find it interesting that the reparations discussion is being had within the African Union right around the time that Black Americans started bringing it up and started actually really talking about taking action to pursue reparations, right? So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting coincidence that at this very time, the African Union, the Ghanaian, whoever he is trying to take this conversation of reparations for chattel slavery to the UN. You know, and the thing is, like, how are you going to take a reparations conversation to the UN when y'all were an active participant in the slave trade? It was a whole business operation that they're still doing in certain parts of Africa till this day. They still selling people as slaves. So you were an active participant in this atrocity that happened for 300 years. You were shaking hands and doing deals with the devil, with the colonizer. Now, all of a sudden, you want to ask for reparations for it and for your country. Your country wasn't even established as a country at the time that the transatlantic slave trade was going on, honey. So, you know, it's just another way to me, I think, to kind of cut in and undermine and get into something that is supposed to be for us over here with Black Americans. I just can't help but to see it that way. My thing is, if they're going to ask for reparations for Ghana or any part of West Africa, if they're going to ask for reparations, it should be based off of the effects of colonialism that it had on their nations. Not about nothing that is going on over here with us, because the transatlantic slave trade negatively impacted the people who were sold. So, which means the people in the Americas. That's the people who, and reparations is not just about the slave trade. It's also about everything that happened after that, like with during the Reconstruction era, all of the terrorism that we faced, all of the things that were done to hold us back as a people, the destruction, the bombings of our cities. It's all of that is all encompassing of why we're why we would have this discussion about reparations in America. So just the fact that they're trying to bring this up right around the time that we're bringing it up, I find very interesting. And then they're doing some kind of burial ground ritual. I think they're supposed to fly over here, and the Ghanaian, whoever the guy is, the Ghanaian guy, and he's supposed to fly over to like New York City or something like that and do some kind of burial ground ritual or something over the ancestors, something like that. And it's like, why you can't even prove that the people that are there were even came from your region. So that's how I know that this whole thing is just supposed to be intrusive on something that's supposed to be for us. They just trying to undermine and take away anything that's supposed to be for us. And it don't even have nothing to do with them. It's like none of their business. It's so many people who have nothing to do with the reparations talk that have so much to say about it, have so much input, and want to dip their hands into it. Why don't you figure out how to get your own shit? That's the question that I got that nobody seems to have an answer to.
They are tabling a resolution in the United Nations to declare the transatlantic slave trade the worst atrocity in human history. So Ghana has tabled a motion in the UN where they're saying, declare this the worst atrocity that never happened. And because this happened, you took our people, you prospered, and you were able to build your nation off of my people's labor, not my labor, but the people I sold to you. You owe me reparations because of that talent we lost. So Ghana is admitting to human trafficking and says, yeah, we sold these folks, but you owe us reparations for these folks we sold you because they went through slavery. All right. You're trying to get our people over there so you can replace them with your people and then using my people's struggles. Okay, let's say we did come from you. You didn't go through that. I'm just like, wow, all of y'all need to go forever. Never return.
This is crazy. So on March 25th, the African Union is going to the UN and they're going to ask them to declare the transatlantic slave trade, right? The worst crime ever against humanity. And they're going to ask for reparations. And while I'm not arguing against the transatlantic being one of the worst crimes ever to happen against humanity, I just argue these people were collaborators. Like, these people helped run the largest human trafficking organization ever to exist on this planet. They collaborated. They supplied the goods. But now all of a sudden they victims? You can't be the perpetrator of the crime and the victim of the crime all at the same time. And they really going up there and going to speak on it. I wonder if they're going to read the letters that their kings wrote to the Europeans after the Europeans decided they didn't want to traffic humans anymore. The African kings wrote letters to them asking them to reinstate the slave trade. Are y'all going to read those letters? Or are y'all going to show them that slave dungeon in Ghana that they calling a castle? Ain't nobody ever built no goddamn castle for no slaves. It's a dungeon where they're profiting off of it today in 2026. Like, this is another African scam. Another African scam. Y'all people are just going to be live on YouTube on the African Union little channel. So y'all check it out. March 25th. Anyway, maybe y'all can help me out with this one right here. So, they always say, when we say y'all sold humans or y'all trafficked humans, they say, oh, well, we didn't sell our own people. We sold enemies and prisoners of war. Cool. Let's go with that narrative. So that means the people that are outside of Africa that came from the transatlantic slave trade, that means those people are the enemies, right? So how come when y'all set foot in America, y'all talk about brothers and family and we need to stick together? What family, bitch?
Is it just me, or am I kind of shocked at how Ghana is trying to take the forefront and speak on reparations? The reason why, you benefit from it. You sold people. You were complicit. You had terrorists. You built a system, and you kidnapped citizens of the African continent and put them inside the slavery system. So how could you be the first out the gate to talk about the crimes against humanity when you were involved in it? Let's also not forget that you owe reparations to Black Americans too. So why are you acting like your hands are clean? And why are you even bringing this issue up first? It's kind of shocking to me. But the one positive thing I can say for this to all the Black Americans out there, anybody denying the reparations movement or the energy surrounded, that it will happen in real time, pay attention. You ain't got to say too much. Watch the reactions of others and how they're responding to something that you made hot. That's all I got to say. But yeah, this article was very eye-opening to me.
Ghana wishes to draw attention to the very consequential resolution which President John Dramani Mahama of Ghana will be tabling on the 25th of March, which is just next week, Wednesday, a few days from now. This is a resolution seeking to declare the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity.
This is so disrespectful.
For more than 300 years, Africans were treated as property, were tortured, humiliated, raped, and forced out of the continent, over 12.5 million of them, in the most dehumanizing and despicable circumstances. The world is yet to acknowledge this, Perpetrators are yet to apologize and have not compensated the victims. This is a time to demand reparatory justice, and this is the time to demand restitution.
This is utterly disgraceful. It's disrespectful. The fact that the Ghanaian president is going to the African Union and going to the United Nations to demand restitution and reparations on behalf of Black Americans for what our ancestors experienced during chattel slavery, more so than transatlantic slavery, because 12 million were not trafficked from the west coast of Africa to the mainland, the United States of America. Less than 4% of those people actually came to the United States of America. And the fact that those people are only trying to speak on behalf of Black Americans speaks volumes. What about the majority that went to the Caribbean? Why aren't you trying to demand restitution or reparations from the Caribbeans, from Latin and Central America? Come on, people, we have to wake up. This is not about giving a damn about what our people endured. Let me show y'all something. Look at this. The Ghanaian president, John Dramani Mahama, will lead a wreath-laying ceremony at the African Burial Ground National Monument in New York City on March 24th, 2026. First of all, those people were not Africans. Those people were Black American people. The event, part of a push for slavery reparations at the UN, highlights the site as the largest, oldest known burial ground for enslaved free Africans in the U.S. Enslaved and free Africans. Those people were not in large African. A lot of those people also will mix with different other ethnic groups. Part of a high-level United Nations event to table a reparations resolution. Let me move out the way so y'all can see the rest. The site, located as at African Burial Ground, Way and Duane Street, holds over 15,000 remains and represents colonial-era Africans who struggled to maintain West and Central African burial traditions. This was not named the African burial. Now, this is where they admit that they are not even sure if all of these people are African, West African, or of Ghanaian descent. Ghana wasn't even established as a country back then. This is why this is so disrespectful to me and to you if you are an American, a melanin-rich American with a long lineage here and your ancestors actually helped to build this country. Let me read the rest. The ritual. They're coming to do a ritual over our ancestral burial ground in New York City on March 25th. If that is not diabolical, then I don't know what is. Okay. The ceremony acknowledges the site where many enslaved people were buried with, in some cases, West African cultural traditions, including a potential Akan, Ghanaian, and Senkofa symbol. In some cases. How did they excavate? They dug up them by connection to Ghana. In 2003, re-entered ancestors were placed in 419 hand-carved mahogany coffins made in Ghana. So because the coffins were made in Ghana, that means that all of those people were Ghanaian. President Mahama, as the African Union champion for reparations, calls the acknowledgement as the first step forward toward justice. Justice for who? Ghana will lay a wreath at the African Burial Ground National Monument in New York City on March 24th, 2026, as part of events leading to the presentation of a slavery resolution at the United Nations General Assembly. President John Dramani Mahama has announced. The president announced this on Sunday, February 15, 2026, during a press conference at the 39th Ordinary Session of the African Union Assembly in Addis Ababa, where he spoke in his role as the African Union champion for reparations. Who appointed this man a champion for reparations for Black Americans? Can somebody tell me? Did we agree to this? Y'all can pause to read the rest. The initiative is not directed at any nation. It's directed toward truth, recognition, and reconciliation. No, you're directing it at the United States government. And we all know why. African enslavement and racialized chattel enslavement were fundamental crimes that shaped the modern world, and their consequences continue to appear in structural inequality, racial discrimination, and economic disparity. Recognition is not about division. And then you could pause to read the rest. The African Union assigned Ghana the reparations mandate following an adoption of the decision 884 in February 2024, which declared 2025 the Year of Justice for Africans. The Year of Justice for Africans. Y'all can read the y'all pause to read the rest. If this does not raise cause for concern, if you don't have an immigrant background, if you're not a continental African, then I don't know what to tell you. Ghana has a lot of issues of its own that it should be focused on, as opposed to worrying about restoration and reparations that's old and due to Americans. Not continental Africans, but Americans. Americans who actually have a direct link
to people that were enslaved and people that did experience chattel slavery. The nerve of Ghana to feel like they are in any position to have the balls enough for that Ghanaian president to go to an African Union or the United Nations to speak on behalf of Black American people, when people are still being trafficked and sold into slavery in the West Africa in 2026.
For over 150 years, foundational Black Americans have been fighting for reparations. This is not a new conversation. This is not a trend. This is not something that just started on social media. This fight goes all the way back to the end of slavery in 1865. Right after emancipation, our ancestors were promised 40 acres and a mule. That promise represented more than land. It represented justice, economic footing, and a chance to build generational wealth after centuries of unpaid labor. But that promise was never fulfilled. Instead, it was revoked, and we were pushed into systems like sharecropping, black codes, and later Jim Crow, systems designed to keep us economically trapped. Since then, we have consistently demanded repair. From early leaders like Callie House and the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief Association in the late 1800s, to movements in the 20th century, to modern legislative efforts like H.R. 40, our people have stayed committed to this cause. This is a uniquely American debt owed to a specific people, the descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States. Now fast forward to today. A new generation is waking up. Younger foundational Black Americans are picking up the torch, educating themselves, organizing, and pushing this issue into mainstream political and economic conversations. We are seeing more clarity, more research, and more unity around what reparations actually mean, targeted justice for a specific historical harm. But with that progress comes a challenge. We are now seeing increasing attempts to broaden, dilute, or redirect the conversation. There are voices, particularly from outside the lineage of U.S. slavery, who are attempting to attach themselves to this claim. Let's be clear, reparations are not about general Black suffering worldwide. They are about a specific, documented harm carried out by the United States government and institutions against a specific group of people, foundational Black Americans. This includes 250-plus years of chattel slavery, nearly 100 years of Jim Crow segregation redlining, housing discrimination, and exclusion from wealth-building programs, mass incarceration, and systemic economic exclusion. This is a lineage-based claim, not a race-based handout. And here's where the conversation gets even more uncomfortable, but necessary. History shows that the transatlantic slave trade was not carried out by Europeans alone. Certain West African tribal leaders and intermediaries played roles in capturing and selling people into slavery. That does not remove the primary responsibility of Western nations, but it does complicate the idea that everyone of African descent shares the same historical position in this specific claim. So, when we see individuals from African or Caribbean nations attempting to position themselves within U.S. reparations frameworks, it raises legitimate questions. Every group has the right to pursue justice, but it must be directed appropriately. If there are claims for reparations in African nations, those claims should be made against the governments and systems responsible in those regions. If Caribbean nations are pursuing reparations, as many already are, those claims are being directed toward former colonial powers like Britain, France, and Spain. But the United States owes a debt to foundational Black Americans, and that debt cannot be redistributed, diluted, or redefined. Because when you broaden reparations to include everyone, you effectively erase the very people the policy was meant to repair. That's why many of us are pushing back now more than ever. This is not about division. It's about precision. It's about ensuring that justice is not turned into a vague concept that benefits everyone a little, instead of repairing those who were harmed the most. And let's also be honest. This pushback is happening because foundational Black Americans are becoming more informed. We are studying policy. We are understanding lineage. We are demanding data-backed, targeted solutions. This is a new era. We are no longer accepting symbolic gestures, broad diversity programs, or policies that lump us into categories that erase our unique history. Reparations must be lineage-based, data-driven, specifically tied to U.S. governmental harm. Anything less is not reparations, it's distraction. At the same time, we must stay disciplined. The goal is not to attack other groups, but to protect the integrity of the claim. Because once the definition is lost, the outcome is lost. And the truth is, this moment is different. For the first time in generations, the conversation around reparations is gaining serious traction in academia, in politics, and in public discourse. Cities and states are beginning to explore frameworks. Research is being compiled. Economic models are being discussed. But with visibility comes resistance, and sometimes redirection. That's why we must stay focused. Because this is not just about money. This is about repair. This is about acknowledgement. This is about closing a wealth gap that was intentionally created. And most importantly, this is about justice that is long overdue. We've been fighting since the end of slavery. And now that a new generation is stepping up, the mission is clear. Protect the claim. Define the lineage. Demand the debt be paid. Because this time, we're not letting it be taken off the table again. Tell me what you think about this topic. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.